And so, thank you. So this is, again, the WEBRTC working group meeting for September 2025. So we use the controls in the meeting to raise or lower hand if you want to speak, get on the speaker queue. And please use headphones when speaking to avoid echo and state your name. Next slide. This is about document status. Hosting within the W3C repo does not implicitly imply adoption by the working group. Adoption requires a call for adoption on the mailing list. Editor staff do not represent WG consensus. Working drafts do imply consensus once they're confirmed by call for consensus. Next slide. So here are the issues for discussion today. We'll try to keep, we have a tight schedule, so we'll try to keep tabs on time controls. And next slide.
We cannot hear you if you're trying to something.
Sorry, I was in a standards body meeting. I had to go mute. That tab.
Peter, we can hear you.
It was playing the audio still, so I was trying to find the mute tab option in the browser. Before that, I couldn't comprehend what you were saying. It's too hard to hear two things at once.
Right.
It's W3C.
So Peter, we can hear you. Can you mute, please?
So without further ado,
Harold, can you mute Peter?
For Anand and for Mariusz. So Peter, just get you caught up. I'm going to share my screen out with myself and the issue we're talking about.
What should we do here?
Harold, do you have a mute option for Peter? Or?
I'm trying to find out.
What that looks like. The particulars around like how can this thing about day to day basically still have the same function as this day. The SDP offer answer model.
Thank you.
I can see, but I don't have authorization to mute. But he's muted already. So.
Right, great. So before we move on, we should get a scribe. And Dom, would you be able to scribe for us?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So with that, the first item is meeting capture output. UN, are you here?
Yeah. Next slide. Okay. So within Safari, we implemented setSecID a while ago, and we had some issues. The first issue is that changing of speaker can be disruptive. If the web page is like hopping to different speakers without the user wanting it, it can be very challenging. And usually when we have these kind of methods that can do that stuff, we put user activation there. So that's what we did, and we shipped it. Firefox and Chrome, as far as I know, do not check for user activation. We found out that there are some scenarios where like a straightforward user activation check is problematic. And we fixed those in various ways. And so our approach to that should be that the spec should allow user agents to put a user gesture. So I was thinking like a should. I can go into details in how we fixed the problematic cases. Basically, whenever there's a device that is removed, or when there's a change of state, like a device change event, we are, in fact, stating that this device change event has user activation, so that if a device disappears, then the website will be able to change of speaker, for instance. I'm not sure yet that we want to add that in the spec. So what I'm asking working group here is whether we could add a should or a may, but I would prefer a should in general, since we have showed that we can land this check, and with a few tweaks, we can ship it without any issue. So any thoughts on that proposal? Yep, Yanivar?
Well, I'm a bit concerned that this adds variance within implementations, and this might lead to web compat issues. Could you elaborate again what the risk here is? You mentioned Firefox and Chrome does not have any limits like this. Yeah. And so I think my preference would be for Safari to align with that, unless there's a privacy or security issue.
It's the same kind of limitations that we would like to have for Get User Media or Get Display Media. Like when a website is starting to play audio, we put a user activation check there, and I think it's now in the media specs. So whenever you start playing audio, we say, hey, do user activation. And so my thinking is that when you call SysID ID, basically you're stating that you're starting to play audio on a given speaker. So it seems logical to put a user gesture check. Harald?
The most common use case where a device is no longer available is when people unplug their earbuds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when they unplug their earbuds and put them down, and the application notices, will there be a user activation event available, or will it not?
You mean in Safari's implementation? The website will be able to change the speaker. Yes.
Why?
Because there's a device change event, and we say that in that case, the device change event, the web application is reacting to the device change event, basically. And so, when we fire the device change.
So I never quite understood what mandating user activation to change the speaker means, or mandating user activation at all. It seems to be a web compat issue. But are you saying that a device change event in this case constitutes a user activation?
Yes, that's how we implemented it in Safari. And okay. we did that, and we also did the fact that usually web applications in that case call enable devices, which is async. And what we do is that we propagate this user activation into the enable devices handler as well, so that there's no breakage. And websites are actually doing that strategy, and it's working in Safari like it's working in Chrome.
So it seems harmless, but only if you change the definition of user activation to include the turning off your earbuds.
Or plugging.
So, but that's why I said that I think the spec should allow it because it seems to, in general, make sense. There's web compat concerns. I can hear that. We think that we solved them. We'll see whether there will be more, but so far so good. It has been like there for 9 months, I think. And so, yep, I see Yoniva in the queue, or maybe Kurbitz. Kurbitz first.
Yes, I have a question. A common use case for collaboration apps is to place a ringtone for an incoming call on the speaker, while you have the actual call on the headset. Would that still be supported?
So you need to call setSync ID at some point where the audio will flow. So for instance, in a call, what you do is you call get user media, and then you get the devices, and then you call setSync ID at that time, basically, because you have a list of devices. And there we consider that since you allowed microphone, usually there's a gesture, and even if there's no gesture, the fact that microphone started is also user activation. That's another case where we had to fix our heuristic.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, that kind of answers my question, which was going to be, given that user media, it sounds like this isn't really user activation, but it's quite a long list of specific criteria. I was going to bring up the same case where if you start a GUM call or a call, you might want to use the camera, microphone, and speaker you used last time, and trying to set them all up at the same time. And it seems problematic to me that if we add user gesture to one of these at a different time than the other, I'm not sure. It sounds like that's going to make it hard for web developers and break things.
I'm not sure I understand how it's difficult, but basically, when we call get user media in Safari, the enumerated devices list is changing, basically. So there's a device change event, and then you have a list. So that's where websites are actually doing their setup. Otherwise, if device is changing, again, device change event is being fired. So you're again in a situation.
User activation or device change event.
Yes, basically that's. I can be much more precise. It has been like 9 months that I implemented, so I can check. But basically, these are the two things that we implemented, and so far so good.
But if I'm calling get user media with previous device IDs, and then I want to do that to the, but device change event doesn't necessarily fire from get user media.
That's true. I can check whether we are. I can check whether this is done for get user media resolution as well. I think that it's only when we start microphone capture that we have to do this. When there's a next get user media call, usually the setup has already been done. So why should you be able to change microphone while you're already while you were already able to do it? I don't think it has been seen as a concern when we shipped that feature.
Okay. Yeah, at this point, I don't think Firefox would be able to do this. I think I would. So, and I also don't like should in the spec. I would rather wait until we can get a must if we're going to do this. I mean, I see Tim on the line. So.
Yeah, Tim. You're muted, Tim.
I'm supportive of this kind of change. I think we do need to work a little more on the detail, but I do think that this is a good idea. I think you can imagine, particularly in the kind of low latency sports broadcasts, that you might find the adverts stop coming out through your headphones and start coming out through the speakers to make sure they maximize their coverage and that kind of stuff. I think there are a bunch of misuses of the existing API that we could avoid like this. So I'm in favor of it if we can get the semantics right.
So here we are not asking for like a must. We are asking for allowing the current Safari's behavior in the spec. I think it will be okay to, in a follow-up, precise exactly the rules that Safari is implementing, and then I'll be fine to add that in the spec as well. Dom, you in the queue?
Yeah, I wonder how difficult it would be to turn it into a master. So it is just a matter of adding the device change event and the empty device ID, or?
I think it would be reasonable to ask implementers to try to do it as well, and then it's a must. That's, or we can try Mast, and then when people start implementing it, we'll see how they will do it. But I was thinking that the first step was saying, hey, we should really go there. And it's a good sign to web developers that, hey, we are planning to go there. Kurbitz.
Yes, so well, I'm okay with adding a may so that it's allowed to do the checks, but to properly make it a must, we need to list all the conditions where such sync ID is allowed, because I mean we're pushing the definition of user activation a bit too much. Like okay, when you add the device, when you remove the device, when you change the settings of the device in the operating system, so when you yeah, so we probably need to think a little more about all the cases. And yeah, but we can start with a main so that yeah, it's allowed to do additional checks.
Okay, I can start with the may, and then I'll file another issue describing how we can go from may to should or must. Okay, sounds good. Next slide, because we already spent a lot of time on this slide. So hopefully we can go to the next one. So yeah, as part of the same implementation, we had issues with, we had web compat issues with enumerated devices, where Chrome is exposing a default device ID for speakers. And some websites, you can see a screenshot there, are actually using it and providing like a nice UI. And so next slide, Safari actually aligned with Chrome there, basically. There does not seem to be any harm in doing so. And it's some websites are using it properly. It's true that it's redundant. It's sort of redundant with, currently I think it's redundant with the empty string. In the future, maybe it will be different if we have like different, like a default speaker for the whole page. So the proposal here is to expose a default speaker device. Default device will always be the first speaker in the list. Its ID is default. And basically, Sensic ID empty string would be sort of equivalent to Sensic ID default. That's what Safari is implementing. I think it's what Chrome is implementing. I'm not exactly sure. So I would be interested in hearing about that.
That's basically what Chrome implements.
Yep, Jean-Yves.
Yeah, so this is an unfortunate situation. I agree. Excuse me. For web compat, I mean, because this makes it current. I should ask first: is this the same? Is this the same situation for microphone as well, or just speakers?
I don't. For microphones, I think we have a few quirks there, but it's not the same situation. Like the default, like system settings default is something that I saw in web pages. I did not see that for microphones, so I'm not quite sure for microphones.
My main concern is that it's a competing model that it's not really that compatible with the spec. The spec has a feature where we're supposed to fire the device change event if the system default device changes. And by having this virtual device, and you could then call enumerate devices and see that the first device was now a different one than before. However, in this case, you'd actually have to inquire the name because the device would not change. It's the name of the device that changes.
I'm
so
not
how
quite
you would go about it would be different.
I'm not quite sure here. I think that if you want the default, you basically call Sensic ID empty string.
You can do that today, yeah. So you don't need this new device. But
Yeah.
if you want to learn, if you want to have a device change model, the one you're showing here, where follow system default, I think a lot of websites actually try to present a flat list of devices. And in that case, they might want to know when the user changes within a website, but also if the user changes through the OS. And couldn't this hamper that ability?
Maybe. So we did that change for web compat, and it seems to be working well. So it's true that you could have some web pages that got somehow not broken, but their behavior would be suboptimal. But that's not what we saw, probably because these web pages were optimized for Chrome's current behavior. I see Kerbits on the queue.
Yeah, I think the default for the output devices is a very good idea. So a default listed in my devices, and I think Firefox does actually implement it in some cases when you use select audio output. If I'm not mistaken.
We only do it in the case where the top device is supposed to be the default device. So if the only exposed device with select audio output, it's possible to only expose a non-default device. In that case, we would be miscommunicating if we listed a device first. So in that case, we do insert a dummy device in the first place. Yeah. So it's a bit
so having it, I mean, makes that it's part of it's like having it makes this like not a workaround, but just like a natural part of the model.
I would mention also that default speaker is something that is quite. It's a concept that is quite used in OSs like macOS, iOS, Android. They all have default, and so exposing a default concept is not like a super bad idea either.
Yeah, and also I should mention Firefox as a bug file where we still don't implement correctly the device change event for system changes. So I agree this is an area of compatibility that might be good to solve perhaps this way. So I think I would just I think I'm in favor if we can work out some of the kinks about the device change event firing and when it should fire and stuff like that. Does that work?
Okay. So is it something that is, let's say, ready for PR and we can let editors like fine tune all the details you're mentioning, or do you think we should revisit this issue?
I'm sure we can discuss on the issue, but I'm not going to stop at PR either. So.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool.
Next slide, if I still have time. I'm not sure.
No, you still have time.
Okay. So you can see a screenshot there of iOS, the phone app, and you can see that they have like the speaker where you can select which output you actually want, and they have these icons. And these icons are quite useful. And I think that the audio working group is also interested in some cases to know whether a device is Bluetooth or not, because it might change latency. So we discussed in the past the possibility to improve how animal devices would provide like this kind of information. So there the proposal. So I think that website can still somehow do it with device labels, but it's a bit cumbersome and it's quite error prone anyway. So it seems harmless, I think, to add an optional type property to media device info, and we could have like an enumeration. So I mentioned USB, Bluetooth built in. Maybe there should be more. We can restrict to a few initially, and then we can increase over time because it's only it's an out enumeration. It's not an in enumeration. So we should be good to extend it in the future. Thoughts? Yep, Yanniva.
Yeah, I think I like this. I don't see a huge privacy issue from it since you have the device label. So it would only be exposed when the device label is exposed, correct?
Correct.
And also, I'm wondering if you had headset as a category, because I feel like our original spec was supposed to have group ID. You're doing some math on group ID, you're supposed to be able to figure out if something was a headset, but in practice, a lot of laptops also have matching microphone, so that became difficult. Is that something we could solve here? Okay.
Yeah, we could try. Yeah. Okay, I'm hearing some rough consensus, so I think we can say it's ready for PR.
I'm a little bit worried about the specifics of the enumeration.
Mm-hmm.
Since I mean, many microphones are USB connected even when they're built in, and the user might not perceive Bluetooth. Two different devices connected by the Bluetooth as actually different. But we can do that on the PR.
I should have refreshed my memory and looked at what OSs are actually exposing. But I was thinking that before doing the PR, I would actually go through what macOS, Windows, and so on would expose, because that seems like a good candidate list.
Yeah. If you can't get the information, then it's rather useless.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, so the conclusion is proceeding with the PR then, or?
Yep.
No.
And I like precise the exact enumeration list. Like there's the mention of headset, and there's the mention that maybe some of these values might be not adequate. So we should be cautious, and we can start very small there.
Good.
Finally, so it's quite specific to iOS, but what we're seeing in iOS, maybe Android as well, is that if you select some speakers, they will forbid use of some microphones, or reverse. If you're using microphones, then they will forbid use of speakers. And there's simply no way for websites to know it. So in general, the combinations are kind of weird. It's really a specific microphone that you're using and a speaker, and usually people will never select the two. But it's still quite bad that websites would be able to provide entries that would not match. So I don't really know what we can do here, because the number of devices is really like a list of devices, and they should all work together. So one possibility is to say OSs should make progress. It's not really true. Like users will tend not to select combos that are not working, and websites do not care. The other possibility would be to provide that information in some way. So I was wondering whether, I know it's an issue for iOS. I'm not sure about Android and so on. So I was wondering what was the appetite from the work group to fix that issue. Yep, Guido.
But apart from like failing sync ID or failing get user media when it's not going to work because the wrong combination of devices is chosen, what would you do? Like return a matrix of what combinations are valid or not, something like that? Or
I don't know. I don't know what we would do. Yeah, I don't have a clear proposal here. I'm just stating that it's the current state on iOS, and if it's only on iOS, then maybe fine. But if it's over OSs as well, then maybe we should not be the only one to think about this issue.
I guess the possible next step is to investigate a little more about the problem, and see how severe it is and how bad the current solution is. And if it indeed is a significant problem, then we try to explore the solution space for it.
Okay.
So I would hope, I mean, it reminded me of a similar problem on phones, I think. Do we still have the case where you can only have one microphone open at the same time? If you try to open the second one, without stopping the first one, you might get similar errors. So I think this might be an area where web developers are already used to slog through. But yeah, I don't have a good. So I agree it could be a problem, maybe on other devices, but hopefully, yeah, I don't have a good solution either.
That's okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's maybe time anyway.
Yep.
Thank you for the discussion.
All right, thank you. And next slide. Decoder exposure.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. So, hi, everyone. My name is Nishida. I'm a product manager on Microsoft Edge. And today I'll be discussing the decoder software fallback problem, which I've been working in collaboration with a few other folks in this call today, like Philip, Henrik, Sun, Diego. And I know this has been discussed in the past. So for today, my goal is to give a quick overview of the problem and API shapes we've considered. But I mostly want to spend time on discussion, especially clarity around the privacy concerns that have come up in the past and align on next steps. So starting with some background information, game streaming apps like Xbox Cloud Gaming and NVIDIA GeForce now depend on hardware decode to achieve low latency playback. And right now, the problem is that there's no clean way for apps to detect when decoding falls back to software. In the past, Xbox used to rely on decoder implementation, but starting with Chromium M110, that required get user media permissions. And that's not ideal for 3 reasons. First, it's invasive. It prompts users unnecessarily. And then it's overkill since it grants access to the camera and mic hardware when apps don't need it. And then also it has a high failure rate since users have no reason to allow it unless they want to use voice chat. So what we need is a non-invasive way to detect fallback. And additionally, media capabilities APIs that allow for querying the hardware software capabilities of the client device are not sufficient because there's no guarantee that those capabilities will take effect during the actual game stream. And streaming scenarios care about what actually happened during the stream versus what may happen during the stream, since that information is needed to make midstream decisions. Next slide, please. So our goal here is to provide developers a way to detect when software fallback happens during a stream that allows them to understand how common software fallback is in the wild, catch regressions, and take steps to reduce its incidence. And I also want to call out the non-goal here. We're not trying to expose vendor-specific details or device hardware information. We only want to give developers an indicator of when decoding is happening in hardware or software. And the proposal here is to surface an event on RTP receiver or the transceiver. And this event could fire in 3 cases. So when a decoder error occurs, when the engine falls back from hardware to software decoding, or when a software decoder isn't available, like we're seeing cases with H.265. And this enables apps to respond in useful ways, like alerting the user, renegotiating codecs, or debugging delivery problems more transparently. Next slide, please. Now, I want to talk about the main concerns that's been raised in the past discussions, which is around privacy and fingerprinting. First, so I want to call it that some of this information is already exposed through media capabilities. The power efficient attribute can already hint at hardware versus software usage. And then second, fallback doesn't deterministically reveal capability. It doesn't prove whether a device supports hardware decode. It just shows that in this moment, the browser had to fall back. And that could mean either the device lacks hardware support for that codec, or the hardware decoder was just temporarily unavailable. So we don't believe that this event introduces a new fingerprinting vector. It just makes an opaque runtime behavior observable to developers. Next slide, please. I want to quickly go over the two API shapes that we've looked in the past. So first, proposal A here, a new event emitted on the receiver with error codes and text. And then next slide, please. And then another option is a new event on the transceiver with a signal that fallback happened, like on decoder fallback or on decoder error, on decode error. So that's all I had. I want to now open up for discussion if there's any follow-up questions about what we've addressed regarding the privacy concerns, and if there's consensus on moving forward with this and further exploring the API shapes. Yuan?
Yes, the first thing is that I think it was discussed and the ping working group raised some concerns. So I think it would be good to loop in the folks that did the initial review to see whether they will be happy about it. The second thing that comes to mind is whether if media capabilities is already providing this info and you can sort of call media capabilities again, like every 10 seconds or 5 seconds, whether it's good enough. And if so, then we might avoid all the ping working group discussions and have media capabilities handle it, basically. Because, so what you say, for instance, about temporal, a decoder being temporarily unavailable, I would think that if a decoder is not available, then media capabilities will say, hey, Huawei is false. Media capabilities at the time that you are switching from hardware to software. So the only issue is really that you have to poll and you don't have an event, but it may be seen as a feature, sort of. So these are my two comments there.
Yeah, can you go back to the slide on the privacy and fingerprinting? I think it's 3 slides. Oh, after this one. Yeah, we could stay on this one. So a couple of points for media capabilities. The main difference here is that we want to know during runtime, and so what the media capabilities exposes. There's no guarantee that that information will take effect during the actual game stream. So that's one reason we're proposing an event. Diego, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, but we have followed the media capabilities approach before, and it signals the potential for there to be hardware decode in some cases, but at the end of the day, you might not end up getting the hardware decode for the actual WebRTC media stream, which is what matters to us. You are correct that in the case where media capability says that there's no hardware decode capabilities, we just have no chance of getting hardware decode, but there are many cases where media capabilities will say that there is hardware decode and we just won't get it during the stream. So an example of that is in Xbox Cloud Gaming, there's this asset that shows like while we're loading the server before the stream, when that asset is badly implemented or when we regress it, it will retain the decoder resources, and in some devices it will prevent the actual stream from acquiring those resources. That's an example of an issue that we have run into before, and without having this sort of like what actually happened telemetry capability, we just can't set up any trustworthy monitoring or alerting for any of our devices. So we're dealing with ever increasing combination of browser and OS, and like that we have to support as a product. And the only way to like keep up with all of this is to have some sort of telemetry stream that we can aggregate and set up alerting against. We really need to know when a stream falls back to software, even if the device had hardware capabilities.
So, if I understand correctly, media capabilities is solving the issue of device like hardware support, but it's not solving the case of temporarily unavailable. And maybe
Correct.
that's a shortage of media capabilities.
It might be a shortage in media capabilities, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that you have the stream negotiate during SDP. The profile of the codec, even like the format of the codec of the stream during runtime, were there B frames or P frames or a combination of both. There are characteristics that will lead to a decoder giving up in the middle of the stream and falling back to software. I just feel like the media capabilities approach requires us to be all-knowing and like kind of predict every possible thing that can be considered by the WebRTC underlying implementation as some factor that determines decode for software versus hardware. When we could have this event that tells us the WebRTC implementation did this, like that, it's easier for an implementer. I'm talking about like the Chromium code base or Firefox or whatever, to detect that there was a software or hardware decode event than for them to expose the perfect media capabilities APIs that will guarantee us that we will get hardware decode.
I'll let over discuss. Just to mention that if Ping working group is fine with this approach, I'm also fine. But in general, we are seeing a trend where web codecs is being used with WebSocket, with WebTransport, with whatever, and they might face this exact same issue. And then media capability is supposed to be the tool to fix that issues there. So it seems that having one solution for all problems would be nice. But I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, I think I saw you raise your hand first. I better skip over you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, so I think, so thank you for your patience on this issue. I see this has been through a joint meeting a couple of years ago, and I also see that it was an issue on the stats. I think it was actually feedback from the Ping, Peter Snyder, I think, that made you move away from stats to this event strategy. So I think that's encouraging. I did have a question in that stats issue, which was stats issue, WebRTC stats 730. Sun Shin said, based on my proposal, decoder fallback only triggered when the decoder starts with hardware acceleration. Unless the session starts with hardware decoding, the decoder fallback will not be triggered. Is that still the case?
Sun, are you on this call?
Yes, I am. First of all, thank you for presenting this. I'm really excited to have this feature. And to answer Yaniba's question, I think that's still valid, but based on what Nishita just presented, it's more like a superset of what I proposed before.
Okay. I guess my concern is whether it's not really clear what fallback means. And does that mean that a system that never has hardware, for example, would it event fire?
So yeah, Michael, your question was the original question was when. So yeah, can you actually clarify that question? Just to make sure.
Oh yes. So this is phrased as a situation where you have hardware and then you lose hardware for some reason, or what is this event ever firing on the system without hardware?
System without hardware. If the hardware doesn't, oh, okay. So if the hardware doesn't exist, does it ever fire?
Right.
Yeah, this would include that scenario as well. So if you don't have hardware, or if you did have hardware and midstream something went wrong, like issues because of the device, it would also fire.
Okay, because that's a little unclear the way it's phrased right now. As a fallback, it seems to be more of an event that's happening where you had something and you lost it, or that might have a better privacy profile. So, but yeah, I also would ask for clarification about there might be cases that were presented where, for small frames, for instance, going to software might not be a terrible thing, and maybe we could change this a little more to make sure that it seems to me that there should have to be a problem, and not just something changed from hardware to software, but that also is problematic. Perhaps things are no longer quote unquote power efficient or something like that. But when it comes to API proposals, I would definitely favor B instead of A. I have concerns with A, and that it makes it hard to treat it, to differentiate fatal errors from this doesn't seem like an error in that sense. So, and also there's some design principles that we want to avoid, custom events. So
that was a proposal.
Okay, yeah, so
proposal B is the single event.
The transceiver. Yeah, I think we could tweak the naming here. Henrik also said he likes this proposal, and I think what the feedback he had around was the naming specifically, like that might clarify some of these concerns, like calling it on decode error rather than decoder fallback to capture more of the scenarios.
So I'm supportive of the direction, but would like more clarification on when it would fire, because if it's just going to immediately fire with information that there's no hardware here, that might be less than ideal. But I'll yield to other people on the queue.
Yeah, we could definitely follow up on that. Tim, I believe you're next.
Yeah, thanks. I'm supportive of this. I can definitely see that it's necessary. I'm less supportive of the fallback concept and the hardware-software dichotomy. I think it's important to know when a decoder implementation has been swapped out underneath you. I would be supportive of an event which said on decoded implementation change, because I think that's actually what you care about, that it's changed, not what it was, and whether it's hardware or software. There are super efficient software implementations, and hardware and software is blurring. So I'm nervous about that as a dichotomy. And I think the other thing that I would like to see, but I understand may be problematic, is that actually I'd like to decouple what you really care about is the latency. You want to actually want to know how long does it take to decode this frame. You don't care whether it's hardware or software. What you really care is whether it's getting it done in time. And so I think that, if I understand correctly, Ping didn't like that turning up in the statistics. I don't remember that discussion, but it would, for me, it would be nice to have a statistic which said, average frame decode time is X, if we don't already have one.
We do.
So it seems to me in that case, notifying of a decoder change and then looking at the stats will get you where you want to go.
Hugo, do you have any? Is that something Xbox has tried before?
We track decode times, and they're available to us in WebRTC stats already. Figuring out if there's a regression in the decode behavior for a particular device is exceptionally hard because we cannot detect device types for other privacy reasons in the browser, to the point where we could say like, oh, this is Samsung S24 Ultra versus a Pixel 9 or something. Like the GPU detection. There's like, for good reasons, there's like fingerprinting protection, so we can't figure out the specific hardware characteristics of the devices that are running cloud gaming. So the best thing we can say is like, in this browser, this OS version, and like maybe manufacturer of the device. But it becomes really hard to detect things that are actually problematic and a regression in behavior for a particular subset of users,
But
when we're just looking at the trend of decode times.
To my point, would it be useful to be notified that the decoder had changed underneath you? Would that contribute to your debugging?
It would be useful. It would also not be as useful. So first, CPU decode, even if it's really quick, it does have battery draining implications and also thermals implications. When you're talking about decoding video at 20 megabit per second on a mobile device, even if the mobile device is using CPU decode and it's doing it really quickly, the battery and thermals will often just hit thermal throttling very quickly. So it's not like a sustainable state for a cloud gaming session, which is supposed to last over an hour for a normal user. So like the hardware versus software aspect does matter in our case. If we get rid of hardware versus software and just say like, oh, the decoder changed, like we would have to do a lot of extra work for every session to gather actionable telemetry. Like you said, we would have to first get the event and then track the decode times before and after and decide if we cared. So if you compare this with what we used to have, which was the name of the decoder implementation, and if it contained FFmpeg in its name, we knew that it was software decode and it was super easy, to this new state where we have to do a bunch of inference from an event that's like very obtuse, and like this whole concept of power efficient and whatever. There's like a lot of things that maybe make sense for a video calling scenario, but when you're talking about 120 FPS, H.265 streaming, 30 plus megabit per second, like the subtleties and the definitions of things like power efficient do matter. But sorry, I went on a tangent. The whole point is, it would be useful, but it wouldn't be the ideal thing. That if we get this out of the discussion, we would end up in a situation where we'd still want to get more and go back to discussions.
Yeah, thanks, Diego. I know we're running out of time, and there's still some people who have their hands up. Dominic, maybe we could go through these quickly. Any comments?
Yeah, so first I would say having to go to the privacy working group shouldn't be the reason to decide to do this or not. They're not bad people, they just want us to do the right thing. And so if there is support that is something we need, then we should get it tried and reviewed. One reason why sometimes events are more problematic from a privacy perspective is that like if an event appears across two origins, it allows to correlate that a single device is being used across origins, so it can break down the same origin policy expectations. that could be maybe dealt with some fuzzing, but just a reason why this is not just an equivalent to something that is purely static. Maybe if we don't want to do the hardware-software distinction, if the boundary is getting fuzzy, we could use power efficient as being the Boolean that is conveyed when a change happens. You change from being power efficient to not being power efficient. So just a suggestion.
Yeah, I think the main issue with the power efficient one is it only tells you it doesn't tell you if there's changes during streaming. But I'll note maybe potentially doing a follow-up with the privacy team on this will be a good idea as a next step. Kervitz?
Power efficient is, I think, gated on hardware as well, so it's not available to game streaming. But as Diego says, currently apps can poll get stats and determine using heuristics whether that changed, that fallback happened. And I think we don't want to encourage that. So we should find a solution here, finally.
Yeah. Harold?
Yeah, just a completely different angle that I want to have mentioned. Why on earth is this on transceiver? And I mean, it's a decode only thing. It should be on receiver.
From what I recall, it was basically 2 years ago we discussed that. I haven't seen a use case for exposing a similar event on the sender. So I would prefer on receiver.
Okay.
Oh, we have to end it now. There are 5 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think as a next step, it looks like there's consensus around finding a solution for this. So we'll follow up with the more detailed details on the solution, and one potential follow-up was with the privacy team. Well, thank you all for your discussion, and I'll hand it back for the next topic.
All right, thank you. Okay, looks like I'm up. All right, so for generate keyframe, we had some issues filed. There's 4 of them here, so we can just dive in for the first one. Next slide, please. Let's see. I'm seeing, could we get the next slide? I'm still seeing the same slide. Oh, thank you. All right, so briefly, we already have an API to generate a keyframe from main thread, which is implemented in Chrome. That is using get parameters and set parameters. So for set parameters has an encoding options second argument, where you can provide an array of dictionaries with keyframe true or false. So let's remove the other one that no one has implemented, which is on the sender. We have sender.generate keyframe with a pretty much similar API. So the proposal is there to remove the sender generate keyframe. Any objections? Thoughts?
Yeah, I really don't like the first API at all. I mean, I'll live with it, but I don't like it. I mean, encoding parameters should be less dynamic than. I mean, the validity of that is 30 milliseconds. You know, it's crazy. It's not a parameter. It's not an encoding parameter.
Okay. So you would, what would you prefer?
I think the second one makes much more sense. But I like, if it's not what we've got, then I'll live with it. But I just asked to choose between the two, I'd always go for the second.
Yeah. Well, any other? Diego, you have your hand up. Is this for this topic?
Sorry, I left my hand up.
Oh no, you're good. Thanks.
Lower it.
So Tim, I would agree that the API surface there perhaps is not the most elegant, and that could also be pardon my example. But I think the argument, to recap the argument, the working group already went for this API, and part of it was that it allowed you to combine all these changes changes to other parameters and sending the keyframe at the same time. That seemed important. So functionally, the first one seems to give web developers more control, even if it might be an eyeful. Any other comments? All right. Does that mean? What does that mean?
Remove it.
Remove it. Yes, because we're not supposed to have redundant APIs like this. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Tim. All right. Next slide. So a script transform can get invoked in the case of simulcast, and then instead of being invoked by every frame, you'll be invoked every frame times the number of layers you have. So if you have 3 layers, it might seem useful to know which one is being processed. For instance, if you wanted to call generate keyframe on the transformer, which is not the API we just removed, which was on the sender, they have the same name. So apologies for any confusion here. So there's still a generate keyframe method on the transformer object in the worker typically that you can call. But since you're being called 3 times, if you're in a 3-layer simulcast per frame, it might be good to know so that you don't accidentally call this method 3 times instead of 1. So the proposal here is in the example to do basically frame.getMetadata.rid and expose that. Any comments? Kerbit?
I think we would also like to have the encoding index, which we have in stats, in addition to the read. I think Henrik will be very supportive of that. We should have mid because the transceiver is not available in the worker, and we would like this API to be working well in workers as well, without requiring hopping between main thread and worker.
Oh yes, so I forgot the last second to last sentence here, that I'm arguing that mid isn't needed because it can be passed in per transceiver in the options object, because you assign a transform to the transceiver and you can pass an options object, including things like mid.
Or we could expose it to the transformer itself as well. So it's a constant. That's the other possibility.
Oh, that's true. We could do that as well. Would that work, Pippa?
Typically, I would expect web developers to have 1 transform per script. So they would need to mid to differentiate between audio and video, for example.
They will have 1 transformer object per transform, so per sender or per receiver, so per mid. So they should be fine. I think the idea of not exposing it frame is just to be more lightweight, though it's probably not that big a deal. But I think it would be nice if we could ease web developers' life. So I would be fine with exposing it to worker object. So maybe we should find an issue about this. I think so, yeah.
I think it's a separate from this one, so.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any objection to adding read. There's a suggestion to also add an index.
Encoding.
Encoding index. But that doesn't necessarily block this issue, does it?
No, it's...
No. We just file an issue to expose more things.
Okay. Do we want to fill the room on adding an encoding index as well? Any objection to that? Doesn't it seem a bit redundant to read though? I mean,
we have it in stats as well. It is redundant, kind of, but it's easier for developers to handle.
More ergonomic.
Okay, I don't have a strong opinion on that, so I think we can leave that for a PR. Is this ready for PR?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Next slide. So this is the same example, but from before, but there's a call out that if you call generate keyframe without any arguments, there's a PR to fix that to mean trigger keyframes for all RIDs. if you don't provide a RID. However, there was a previous decision on that, and so but there's an outstanding PR to align with that decision because there were some concerns about other things that were discussed around the same API. So I want to call out this one first. Do we still all agree that if you don't pass any arguments to generate keyframe, what should happen? Should it generate just the, for a simulcast stream, should it only generate keyframe for the first layer or all layers? And I'm basically proposing that it should default to all layers. Any objection to that?
Yep, I think that's what we wanted from the beginning. The main use case is changing keys when you're doing encryption, and in that case, you want to get keyframes for all layers. So I think it was a mistake that we did that in the spec, and the behavior here should really be all frames, all layers.
Okay, I'll take that. In that case, next slide. So this is the more important one. Should transformer generate keyframe take an array of RIDs? Currently, in the spec, transformer generate keyframe takes a single RID, which means that things that are simple is to, for instance, fish out the get metadata RID that we just agreed to, and pass that one in. That will cover this layer. You could pass it with no arguments, which will cover all layers. And simulcast is usually, 2 to 3 layers. I've never really seen 4. So the only one missing here really is if you wanted to generate keyframe for 2 of the 3 layers, which seems like an edge case, but does require a bit of JavaScript promise composition, which might look a bit ugly. So this 2 layers use case is awkward, yet likely rare, but might trigger keyframes to be generated twice in certain implementations that might have difficulty with fine-grained keyframe generation. So next slide, please. The issue here is that the transformer generate keyframe RID has shipped into implementations, Firefox and Safari. Next slide. And so our options here, I would think, is that, if we wanted to change this to take a RIDs array, that would perhaps be more consistent with the less loved set parameters version that we had 5 slides ago that also took an array. Also for backward compat, we could perhaps allow the get generate keyframe to take an array or a DOM string for backwards compat with what are shipped. Or we could just leave it as it is, that takes a single RID. Discuss, please. Ewan?
I don't have a strong preference either way, but I have a slight preference to keep it the way it is. The design initially was to cover 2 use cases. The first one was end-to-end encryption in its all layers. And the other one was like, in the case where we at some point can catch play and so on, then maybe we want to emulate the current behavior of asking from the remote party to generate a keyframe, and there it's per read, I think. So these 2-layer things, maybe there's a use case. I don't know about the use case so far, and for transform at least. And it's adding a little bit of complexity. Like if you have a list, what happens is if one is not good and the other one is good and so on. So we'll have to do a little bit. So it's adding a little bit of complexity, and I'm not sure there's a real use case for it. So that's why I have a very small preference to keeping it the way it is. If we find a use case, then of script transform plus generate keyframe of 2 layers, then maybe we should actually do it.
All right, thank you. Kerbert?
The use case for having only 2 layers is shown in this call. For example, we might be sending 720p and 1080p, and for something else, we might be sending 180p, not sending the middle 640p or 480p layer. So it's a very common use case in SFU scenarios.
You have set parameters for that. So the use case here is you have a transform, and in the transform logic, you actually are sure that you want 2 keyframes for two reads. And I'm not sure that we have such a use case right now. But maybe. Is there a transform that actually using JR keyframe and that wants 2 reads? Maybe. If it's for double encryption, certainly not. But
Yes, I had a question about what the return value is, because that was the thing where we had discussions about what is the input, what should be returned if you pass an array, because it originally returned the RTP timestamp, I think. And if you pass an array, that's no longer possible.
Yeah, that has been changed to return undefined based on the same discussion. Yeah.
Does it need to be a promise then?
Yes, because you don't have a list of reads. The list of reads might change on the main thread and so on. So how do you do?
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other opinions? I don't have a strong preference here, only that we can hopefully, I think interrupt 2025 is sort of blocked on this, so I just would like that we can make a decision one way or the other.
So my suggestion would be to leave it as is. We can always do the union trick if we need to add support for the second one, if it's really needed and the current workaround isn't sufficient for some reason.
Yeah, I think we can do that. Like we can for now keep it with a single one, and we can change it to string or array if we find a good use case, and it should be easy to add without breaking.
Okay, any objection to that? All right, that sounds good. I'm good on time again, so that's good. All right, next is Fippo.
Okay, this is a proposal to always negotiate data channels. The problem we currently have is that data channels are only showing up in the SDP after at least one data channel has been created. That is probably for backward compatibility from 2011. It means that applications, including Google Meet, create a throwaway data channel just to get the HTTP endline into the SDP. The other problem we have is that the way JSEP is written, it means that the data channel endline is added after audio and video, which is for backward compatibility with 2011. But the problem we have is that with the new APIs we have, we can actually cause audio and video endlines to be rejected via API calls. And that creates an issue with bundle because that rejects the endlines that bundle is using to attach the candidates to. So it would be good to add a configuration option, a Boolean, always negotiate data channels, defaulting to false for backward compatibility with 2025. This would negotiate data channels as the first endline and let bundle operate on that. And basically, there's no way to reject data channels in the API. So we're good on that. The downside is that we need to be overriding JSEP rules, which is always a bit tricky. But the result is less bundle headache. And maybe in 2030, 2035, applications can stop throwaway data channels. It is discoverable through set configuration whether this is supported, but I don't expect applications to bother. And we have a way for overriding JSEP algorithms. It's shown in the header extensions in WEBRTC extensions. So we have precedence for that. Any thoughts?
So just so I understand, the problem being solved here is that bundle is currently chosen to be the first mline in SDP, is that it?
Bundle attaches to the first mline by default. The data channel SDP spec actually says you should be choosing the mline that is least likely to be rejected.
Ah.
And data channel is not possible to reject in the API. For example, if your first M-line was a video M-line, you use set codec preferences to only prefer H.265. The other side doesn't support H.265, you end up with bundle issues.
Okay, thank you. This makes sense to me then.
Yuan?
Yeah, this makes sense to me as well. I'm just a little bit sad that we cannot do a JSEP revision. If we already are changing with WEBRTC extensions, and we're adding yet another change, and maybe in 2 months from now we will do yet another change, then we should have a way for JSEP. So I don't know how we can solve that issue, but it seems that it would be healthy to have like a JSEP new version.
Yeah, I have a bunch of issues against JSEP. I can talk to Justin WEBRTC whether he wants to go for a cert revision.
Would be nice.
Yanigo?
That'd be great. Yeah, I guess I just want to caveat that are we concerned if this can cause compatibility issues?
It shouldn't, because browsers already accept SDP with SCTP in the first M-line. But
When it's
of
the
course, we
only,
need more tests for that.
Great, thanks.
Okay, is this ready for PR?
Can we make sure we file a JSAP issue at the same time?
Will do. Okay, next slide. Lifetime of stats. I sat down with Henrik last week. Originally, this issue was about data channel stats, but it turned out to be a much bigger mess. The original question was, if you create a connection, negotiate the SDP, but do not establish the ICE and DTLS connection and the SCTP association, do data channel stats exist? And the surprising result was they exist. They exist even before set local description, which makes them very different in terms of lifetime from RTP stats or other statistics. Surprisingly, they also have the data channel ID set after the negotiation, which is on the next slide. And the problem we had is we sat down, we saw no governing rule, no clear pattern. So what we did, we came up with a framework asking, do these statistics exist before set local description, after set local description, after negotiation, so set local description and set remote description, or after the connection is established, or after packets have been received. The problem is we have examples for all of these cases for the different statistics. Next slide, please. So I made a fiddle, which is basically logging the stats type after each step. And even between Chromium and Firefox, I assume Safari is most likely similar to Chromium. There's a lot of difference. For example, Chrome changed the behavior of inbound RTP to align more with Firefox. But for outbound RTP, Firefox is still showing them only after negotiation, whereas Chrome shows them after set local description. And media source, completely different. Candidate pairs are very different. And it's a mess. And it's not even like there's a rule that the object should be complete. So for data channels, they exist before the data channel ID is set. So we have the case that we argued against in inbound RTPs, that we have properties which are expected that aren't there yet at a certain point in time. So far, we didn't make much progress. We thought the framework is useful. So we think the next step is to write web platform tests, see where web platform tests FYI shows that we have disagreements, talk about the disagreements, and then document the lifetime for each type. We also need to look at the lifetime, when do these stats cease to exist, because there are surprises there as well. Any thoughts? Yuan?
I was wondering about web compat, whether changing is a web compat. Hopefully not. So we can actually decide what makes most sense for each stats type, basically, and like have a clear design in design.
I have web compat concerns about Hendrix change for inbound RTP, but we'll see how that goes. Jan-Ivar?
Yes, so I think we're seeing, well, thank you for doing all this research here. I think we're seeing two things in the chart, and one is that there's a lot of diversity of lifetimes across the different types of stats, but there's also diversity between browsers, which is less good. But I think Firefox and Chrome here, also there's no indicator for spec, what the spec says in these, I guess, which could be another interesting data point. But I do, maybe it's a low bar, but I do like that Chrome and Firefox seem to be together more than they are apart. So maybe we can, and also in some areas for upload RTP, for instance, I believe we had a decision that there's still a Firefox bug on to align with after SLD. So that would hopefully improve. Other than that, I do think it's a good idea to document what we should definitely document this for sure. And if we have ability to clean things up without breaking things, that would be good as well. So I think mostly we've been opposed to things that appear before set local description, media source. These are sort of piggyback things that perhaps belong in media stream track stats, frankly, at this point, which we didn't have back then when they were first added. As for data channel stats, yeah, it does seem to be a bit premature because, yeah, I'm not sure what to do there.
Yeah, I mean, the problem we have is we're creating stats objects before we know whether the other side accepts them, which is a problem for outbound RTP, where I prefer Firefox behavior to do it after negotiation. Same for transport. For the default max compat bundle policy, we create 2 transports for 2 M lines and then destroy the second one, which doesn't make much sense.
Well, I think for data channel, it could at least make the case that data channel IDs exist as soon as the application, because you can have negotiated channels where the JavaScript says, I'm going to use ID 7. You can actually, I believe, send ID 7 even before the other side knows what that is. So
yeah. So I think we can document those rules. What makes them show up? For example, for RTP stats, we found the transceiver current direction to be useful. So we just need to write the tests and then document, and then see what we can change.
And also, I would mention that the benefit of doing it at negotiation or later is that you don't have to deal with rollback, which is another unfun thing.
Yes. Harald.
Now, there was a specific thing with candidate pair, which was that some candidate pairs contain IP addresses, and those were considered sensitive. I don't know if that matters when we expose them.
That would be peer reflexive candidates. We hide the IP address for those or the host name, so we should be good there.
So that shouldn't matter.
And we need the peer reflexive pairs to show up, because some of them might only be peer reflexive.
Yes. I mean, I'm in favor of having the data. I mean, the number of data channels you create should be, outgoing data channels you create should be equal to the number of data channels reflected in stats. So I'm in favor of having them show up early.
See, we need to document and then disagree.
Yep.
Yes. Tim?
Yeah, I mean, on that, there isn't a way of you not getting a data channel apart from the connection not coming up. Like, there's no, it's not negotiable. Like, if a request for like ID 7 goes, then the other end's got no option about saying yes or no. It's assumed it's accepted. If there are any data channels at all. So again, I'm happy with it being early. The fact that there's only one data point in it and it's not an interesting one is like pleasant side effect, but I think it's necessary.
Just one more small point. The benefit of doing it late is that you can have more reliable members in the stats dictionary. I would also be interested in some of these early stats. What do they actually contain that is useful, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, for non-negotiated data channels, the data channel ID is empty on the pre-SLD and even after SLD. Okay, we'll report back on the next meeting, probably, and hopefully get to write some tests. And as I mentioned, the data channel IDs are set early in surprising ways. What we found investigating the stats issue is that the data channel ID is already set up on SDP negotiation in all browsers. So if you do a fiddle, don't exchange ICE candidates, the data channel ID in stats is going to be set. It's also set on the data channel object itself. The specification says once an SCTP transport is connected, meaning the SCTP association of an RTP SCTP transport has been established, that determines when that triggers the process to set the data channel IDs. And that doesn't seem correct because the SCTP role is determined by DTLS, and that is already known up on SDP negotiation. And the reason this depends on DTLS is that we have a smart logic to assign based on role to avoid ID conflicts. So offerer does odd IDs, answerer does even IDs, or DTLS client and DTLS server. And all of this can be done without the actual SCTP association, which is a packet that is sent over the data channel or over the SCTP layer. And that is purely based on SCTP. So the proposal would be to split the SCTP transport connected procedure, keep the steps 1 to 4.2, which are basically about ID assignment and checking max channels, as one part. That only depends on the SDP exchange. And we need to split 4.3 and 5, which are data channel open and SCTP transport connected. We need to split them to after DTLS happens. I see Tim has raised his hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hinted at it, but there is the max channels thing. In theory, you could request so many data channels that before you knew that you were going to exceed the other side's max channels. So there is an interesting failure mode there.
True.
I mean, I can't imagine anyone ever does it, but like.
Yes. Yes, we need to look into that too. Good point. Thank you. Jan-Ivar?
Yeah, I was just going to mention workers as well. So there's that. But you said so I don't have a strong opinion here on one way. It might be good to document what browsers are doing if they're all doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, browsers do the same thing, thankfully.
Yeah. So is your proposal to document existing implementations or change it?
Document existing behavior.
Okay. Yeah, I'd support that.
Okay, thank you. So I'll do the PR.
Sergey?
Right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Good. So I'm Sergey from Google Meet, and today I would like to talk about video adaptation in WebRTC and propose a change that would allow applications to do their own adaptation. So there is a functionality in WebRTC that aims to optimize video quality by tuning encoding settings. And apps have some control over it via degradation preference API. It's possible to choose between 3 modes: maintain frame rate, maintain resolution, and balance it. So Chrome implementation under the hood adjusts encode target resolution or target frame rate based on spatial quality, performance, or available bandwidth. Next slide, please. Right. So there are limitations. So adaptation logic is hard-coded and is not optimal for all use cases. So your application may benefit from using different logic, different input signals, different thresholds, etc. So, and if you try to implement external adaptation today, you will find that it interferes with internal adaptation and that there is no way to disable internal adaptation. Right. So, yeah, I think we want to go to the next slide. Yes. So the proposal is to add a new mode, maintain frame rate and resolution. And when enabled, WebRTC should keep encode target resolution and frame rate unchanged, regardless of video quality and performance. Basically, application will take control over adaptation, and that would mitigate or fix this interference between external and internal adaptation, and would allow applications to basically implement external adaptations. Yeah, that's basically it. That's the proposal. Any comments? Yeah.
This makes sense to me. Thanks.
Yeah, this makes sense to me as well. It allows an application to do their own encoding ladder, which is something lots of native applications want to do. I have one question. Would it make sense to expose the QP on the encoded insertable streams frame as well? This allows per frame QP measurements, whereas getstats and polling getstats is probably not a great pattern.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. So I'm not very aware of this API, so what's available there or not. So, but exposing QP on per frame level, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. File an issue.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this. I think it's very necessary. I wonder whether, as Fippo says, I wonder if there's other data that would be useful to make this a sense, whether you've got the data you need in order to make sensible decisions quickly enough. And I'm not sure that stats is the right mechanism, but we'll see.
Yeah, probably some. Well, it depends on application, right? Maybe you want some new parameters, but today's stats seems enough at least to replicate like internal adaptation. And if your application knows something more, so okay, or want to do better, so or different ways to adapt things, so yeah, you can do this.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sergey, yeah, I just want to add a question since you're here. If I set maintain frame rate and resolution and I do nothing, what happens?
So if you operate in constrained environment, so bandwidth is constrained, let's say. So if you do nothing, an encoder cannot fit bitstream into available bandwidth. So then queue will network queue will grow up. So so you will get latency, something like this. But so so we intentionally say in the description of this mod that what we wanted to do, we wanted to keep encode target resolution and frame rate. We still, it is still okay for WebRTC or for user agent to drop frames or do something else, to drain queues, to avoid congestions, and to basically keep things in real time. But it should not change target resolution and target frame rate, and it should not disable like simulcast layers if there is not available, if there is not enough bandwidth for them. So still should try to encode things. But if it cannot, it's fine to drop frames.
All right, thanks. I guess my only concern would be that it sounds a little bit like maintain resolution already, but no, I think I understand. I'm still supportive.
Qubits?
I think it's basically, if you think of the encoding parameters as a triangle, you have maintain frame rate in one edge, maintain resolution in the other, and this is basically the third, and balance is somewhere in the middle. So I think this is very much necessary and allows an application to choose where they want to go.
Also, there is a PR that Henrik started for this, so I guess the next step is to look at the PR and continue there.
Okay, good. Thanks, everyone.
All right, last topic is frame encrypting. So we have interesting thing about WebRTC encoder transform is that an S-frame transform is actually two things. It's both a transform plugin to RTCP, RTP sender and receiver. So you can have sender.transform equals new S-frame transform, or receiver.transform equals new S-frame transform. It's a object designed similar to RTC RTP script transform, but it's actually not a stream itself. It's more of a control object that tells the user agent what to do, either through JavaScript in the worker or just built-in functionality. At the same time, for historical reasons, in the spec, I think, was that the original spec was more designed where stream objects were on the main thread. So it turns out that through an include statement in WebIDL, S-frame transform is also a transform stream, which is a WG streams concept, which you can use to basically S-frame transform any amount of data, even outside of WebRTC use cases. So I'm showing you a WebRTC use case right here, where you can pipe through a new S-frame transform. And in this case, you have to specify what direction you want or role, whether it's encrypt or decrypt, which is also in the spec. So my concern with this is that these are entirely different tools without any functional overlap whatsoever, other than their function of encoding or decoding using S-frame some data. The former here, the main thread API has a readable and a writable. It makes no sense, and it's actually undefined behavior what they do. If you were to read from them, would you get some data or not? It's not clear. And the latter, transform a WG stream, it's not a transceiver. It doesn't transform a transceiver or receiver or sender. So this suggests we might want different APIs for this. Ewan, you want to comment?
Yeah, just to say that it's not undefined behavior. Behavior is defined. And yeah, the principle initially was that a transform had a readable and writable, and we were piping them. So basically, all the thing that was needed when you were setting transform equal to blah was doing this pipe through thing there. And there is definitely some functional overlap because you have to manage the keys and so on. So that is not to say that having different objects, I think different objects are better there. And I would even think that we should have like encrypting and decrypting objects, because the management of the keys, for instance, is different when you're decrypting and encrypting. For decrypting, you need to query against an ID. When you're encrypting, you are setting what you actually want, for instance. So more objects in general seems better. But at the time, one object for everything was good enough. So let's go with more objects. But it's well defined still.
I have a second slide with a proposal for separate APIs, so I'm glad you approve of that. I do have a question about if I do sender.transform equals new S-frame transform, and then I obtain the readable on main thread.
Yeah,
you're saying you would be able to get data.
No, because the readable is locked.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
You did pipe to, you did pipe through, so everything is locked. So you're good.
All right, great. Harald, do you have a comment on this slide?
Yeah, so I believe the original reason for defining this as a transform stream was that we imagined that people would build script transforms where an S-frame transform would be the first or the last step, depending on which side you're on. And if we abandon that, then that idea, which I think we should, because well, nobody has implemented it yet, and then I think we should think about how do we set an S-frame transform and a script transform on the same stream, on the same sender or receiver. If we can solve that, then kicking out the transform stream API is just fine with me. It didn't do what we wanted it to do, and if we have another way to do it, then that's okay.
Well, okay, I don't necessarily disagree, but this issue is not necessarily about removing anything, at least not yet. This is more about splitting the two the parts here that didn't make sense that they're together. So on the next slide, if I can move to the next slide, I'll explain what I'm proposing. So basically, the idea that was in the spec is that you have two ways of using S-frame transform. One is to assign it to a sender or receiver on main thread, and the other is actually to act as a WG stream transformer stream object. And there's a precedent here for text encoder stream and text decoder stream, where you can basically text encode or text decode any data that is streamed, bytes usually, or characters. So to follow that precedent, we could imagine two interfaces, S-frame encryptor stream and S-frame decryptor stream. And this would do away with the necessary constructor argument where you have to specify a role. It's implicit. It's explicit, sorry. And one of the benefits of this is that you can encrypt and decrypt S-frame outside of WebRTC. You could use it in web transport, for example. And unfortunately, I did an example that was actually WebRTC here, just for familiarity, that just to show how you might do it in code that you're familiar with, hopefully. So, but again, this is not limited to WebRTC transforms or workers. So the proposal is to add those interfaces and also remove the part where S-frame transform is no longer a generic transform stream, and also remove the role parameter from S-frame transform options. Thoughts? Ewan?
Yeah, I'm okay with this. There's no feature that is removed, and it will be very clear. As I said, we will be able to add management key APIs that are dedicated to decryption and that are dedicated to encryption, so it will be easier. And once we will have done that, we might be able to duplicate these two management APIs to S-frame transform as well. So I think it's good. And in general, I think it's good to let the user agent do encryption, even if it's S-frame. I think it's better to have the user agent do S-frame and handle S-frame in the script transform or as a whole transform. So I mean, let's go with it.
All right. Any objection to doing a PR for this? Is it ready for PR?
I would certainly like to see an example in the explainer for the PR or whatever of using a script transform and an S-frame transform together.
Yes, I think. Well, this actually does.
Yeah.
Yeah, the example is this one, right? So here we're doing a script transform that is piped through an S-frame encrypted stream, which could be the first step of several or last step of several or anywhere in between.
Okay, so that's a script transform that invokes the S-frame transform. That makes sense.
Okay, yes. But for instance, using that API alone, you could not express as packet, for example. So there's still value in assigning an S-frame transform on main thread. Also, this example shown here requires JavaScript, which leaves out the option of ever doing S-frame without JavaScript. So you can have the user agent optimize it. If you know, the simplest API is to just assign an S-frame transform. But there's a legitimate issue there of how do you specify S-packet and a script transform at the same time that we haven't solved. But that might be for a different day. All right. But does that sound good to you, Harold?
I think so. I think so.
All right. Great. Well, yeah, thank you. In that case, we are done with 4 minutes to spare on the agenda. Do we have any wrap-up steps? Don, were you able to record everything?
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. In that case, thanks everyone for this meeting. I think it was really productive, and hopefully we meet again soon. And I think that's the next meeting is. Let me check quickly here. Next meeting is October 21st, and TPAC after that in November. Thanks everyone, and hope to see you then.
See you also.
Bye.